Good afternoon, folks. Michael Strode of the Kola Collaborative here on this special edition of the Ujamaa Hour. Um, I am having a quiet moment here at home, window at my back. Just in a reflective moment, in a space of reflection at present, where I've had to kind of sit with some silence, do a bit of reading. There's been a lot of reflection on the types of infrastructure that we were attempting to work on within the Kola Collaborative, um, and what the desired outcome for the time bank was, and to encounter a moment where we need that infrastructure but we don't have it is has been quite a challenge. Pardon me, let me just fix this date and time so that I can have my countdown proper. Excuse me. Oh, yeah, that's what I did wrong. Boom. Okay. Sorry. I need that countdown clock to hold me accountable. So yeah, to be in a moment where we really do need an infrastructure like the time bank, and to um, not necessarily be able to provide for that, has been a bit of a challenge, right? There's certainly been moments where I've been able to support some mutual aid that is going on in my community. There's been, some sound offs, and things that I've been able to broadcast via the page, via the social media properties and things like that, um, to get messages out. Um, and there's even been sort of some direct connections and things that I've been able to engage with people on directly. But the real need to do sort of deep asset mapping and to engage um, with a platform like time banking as an organizing strategy for resources. Um, that was something that was really at the top of mind for 2020. And certainly, we had set up several things to really broadcast and to continue doing the offers and needs market over the course of this year. And certainly, everyone is sort of, caught a bit flat-footed and in a moment of uncertainty. And so, yeah, I have been engaging with a bit more challenge, internally, negotiating um, that we need this infrastructure. The infrastructure is not here. What is the next step in terms of moving forward in the absence of that infrastructure? Um, and all I have at the moment is just, sort of the learning opportunity in the aftermath, which is that it's another sort of moment to highlight that at crisis points we really need to have these asset maps in place, and how to sort of drive that message home is probably going to be the ongoing work of the Kola Collaborative for the remainder of 2020, um, to just help remind people that, when we are not in crisis, if we can have sort of regular spaces where we are gathering and where we're getting together to do things like the offers and needs markets, things like the time salons, certainly even sort of projects that have now branched off and are their own thing, Cooperation for Liberation Study and Working Group, which is engaged in a specific task of cooperative study, but the other aspects of the Cooperation for Liberation Study and Working Group are about that relationship building. So even though we're not able to meet in person at the Breathing Room this Sunday, as we had desired, we are certainly continuing the pathway to do some virtual meetings, right? Because we don't want to we don't want to lose our relational tether. We don't want to lose our connectivity. And some of the things that I have been thinking about, were in this interim, because I really rely on and I really value these spaces, not simply as spaces of organizing and community organizing, or spaces of particular types of work or rigor, but I really value the space of relationship that has been created in these places. Um, and I'm really challenged with how to continue keeping those relational tethers linked, interlinked, as we undergo this sort of social distancing piece. Um, so that was actually the I mean, there was a really basic motivation for this special edition of the Ujamaa Hour. I'm still intending in a moment to talk to Chinyere, of the Cowry Collective, and it was really just a touching of base, right? Because both Chinyere and myself, Chinyere having worked on the Cowry Collective, myself having worked on the Kola Collaborative, we've both been thinking very deeply about community asset mapping and about neighborhood networks and about networks of mutual aid, for a great deal of time. And I'm just opening up a space on this broadcast, where I could be in conversation with Chinyere. I don't know, this broadcast probably won't make news. There's not a whole lot new to the story to tell. I feel like I've been telling Chinyere's story for many years. Yeah, probably, at least half a decade, longer. Who knows? Um, but you know, just an opportunity to have two people who are really thoughtful in terms of their approach and their devotion to time banking as a model, to be in conversation on the broadcast. Now Chinyere's delayed because the young koalas, that are at the household. Um, she's attending. She's performing her motherly duties there. So that's why you find me on this broadcast being, hella awkward, because I don't have my conversational partner on the line. And yeah, and this is just a moment for me to be vulnerable and transparent with you, in that um, it's been difficult to be confronted with a crisis that is in need of the infrastructure and the project that you're working on, but not have that finished project, not have that product available to meet the crisis. Um, and it's going to continue to be hard, I'm sure. But we have tools. So some of the things that I have offered to the collaborators that I'm working with, namely spaces like Co-op for Lib and Breathing Room. We've got the Zoom, right? We've got the Zoom Pro account, and we've got the ability to gather people in virtual rooms and use the breakout room capabilities and all of those sorts of things, to get people continuing to talk to one another, to engage with one another. Um, so we've got that going, and we'll continue to attempt to use those virtual tools to bring people near together, with one another. And oh, okay, let's see. Wait, I think Chinyere is boom. So I'm going to continue talking, about this briefly, but now I'm going to perform technical support right in front of you on the line, and I'm going to loop Chinyere into this discussion. And let me call her out on Skype. Hello. Okay. Hold on. It's really up to you. I mean, either one. I can hear you fine at the moment. So, however you would like to proceed. So then the headphones would be the clearest way to get you looped in. Yes. Problem. That's all right. I'm just here talking in front of these guests on the broadcast, and they think I'm talking to myself, but don't know I'm talking. No, that's. I mean, yeah, if you wanted to, yeah, if you want to test it, we'll proceed with the test. I'm live. You're not. You will be live in a moment. Yes, I broadcast and yeah, live and direct. Um, the so you've got the phone in position at the moment. Okay. Well, if it's where you want it to be, then I'll kick you broadcast and you don't have to do a darn thing. That's. Are you ready?
Sorry, let's get the wire right though.
uh,
Oh my. Come on, don't slip on me now. We're propped on some books and some yoga blocks. We're using the phone because we didn't want to mess with the laptop memory space. Okay, we're good.
okay. I am going to switch this broadcast and oh, come on. There we go. All right. You unmute. Yeah. Okay. You're in. All right, folks.
Okay.
So yes, we are live on the broadcast with Chinyere. You saw us in the background fiddling around with tech a moment ago. True to my name, tech. Boom. Um, so yeah, so this was a very much impromptu Ujamaa Hour special edition, which was brought about by some of my contemplations about the sort of need for this infrastructure and the absence of it in the moment of crisis, and just some of the conversation that Shinyure and I've have shared about time banking and about how we're coping in this moment, how we're moving forward in this moment. So, uh,
Yeah, how are we coping?
how are we?
Woo.
Before we start talking about all of our various coping mechanisms, Chinyere, who are you?
Oh, wait. How long is this show? Okay, let's give the short version. I am Chinyere. I am a St. Louisan. I am a parent and I am a time bank founder. I'm currently doing library work, so I've shifted into librarianship and I'm going to school to get my master's of what is it called? Library and Information Sciences. And I'm curious, I'm inquisitive, I'm worried, maybe like some of you are. And um, yeah, I think that's enough about me. I guess I can give more, as we talk.
Hmm. And we crossed paths around the establishment of the Time Bank, or actually around sort of our other mutual archivist, librarian friend Skyla, at a dance party. Before I knew sort of the breadth of time banking, before the time banking bug had bit me, and then bit me, and I became all COVID. Sorry, bad joke. Um,
It'll get you. It'll
Boom.
get you.
So why did the time banking bug bite you, and what did that sort of nudge you towards with the Cowry Collective?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I guess it did bite me. And like, I mean, for me, it like, once I found out about time banks and decided to start one, I really was kind of possessed by this energy that I must grow this time bank. So it does kind of almost feel like something comes over you when you're doing community work that really, brings passion to your life. So I found out about time banking in 2007. I was in the Regional Arts Commission's Fellowship for Artists and Community Workers, basically. And we read this article, the article that I always cite that I love so dearly, called, I think, Time is Money, or no, that wasn't what it was called. Um, The Mighty Dollar. And it was this documentary photography paired with this essay from the Salt Institute, which is in Maine. And it was talking about a community in Maine that had started their own time bank. So someone, another fellow and friend of mine in the group, found the article. We shared the article. We talked about it in the group, and we were like, "Wow, this is such a beautiful, community project. This would be so great for us to do." We had a lab like project during that fellowship, and we never did it. We had other work to do, so we never got around to it. A couple years later, in 2009, I was thinking about that article, because some of the examples they gave were people getting their oil changed for their car, people getting massages, people getting help with their taxes. So this wide range of skills and services. And so I was like, wow, they really got a lot of what they needed from each other. And I need some things in my life right now. I need a lot of things, and I think this is going to be a good way to get some of those things that I need, as well as other people that I love and care about. And so I invited about 10 people that I knew in the St. Louis community, all African American. I really felt like this was going to be a tool for the Black community to organize and mobilize and support each other. So we met. We met at Sweet Art Bake Shop, which is a beautiful Black-owned restaurant and art, kind of like gallery, basically. Art is on the walls. And we met there and just kind of talked about the idea. I'd say about maybe half of those people ended up joining the time bank. Um, and should I keep going, or should we stop for like back and forth a little bit?
Um, no, you can proceed, and we'll have
Okay.
back and forth. Unless,
Okay.
unless you're
That's
like, unless you're like, I've told this story 700,000 times. I don't,
well,
you know,
yeah.
can certainly do.
Yeah.
That is yes. This is consent based. You know,
Okay.
and telling.
Yeah. I'm always like, is this too much? I have told the story. I mean, definitely not 700,000 times, but many times. But I haven't told it in a while. So, and it's a timely story now, since we're going to talk about how, what time banking can offer us as a tool for the current times, whether or not I'm currently operating the time bank, which I'm not.
Yes.
But so back to, let's see, starting it, handful of people joined. They were all friends or friends of friends. So we all knew each other, or we knew of each other a bit in community. We got the group up to about 25 people. This is like in 2010, 2011. And I mean, I found these forms from a time bank in Michigan. I changed them. I made them. I mean, I barely changed them, and then made them my own, and then reproduced like this packet. with like a little bit of money that I had in my bank account. And so whenever I would go places, I'd be mentioning it to people and have these packets with me. It's kind of like a pusher for like time banks and asking people to fill them out by hand. And then I would like input them, when I got back home into Word and I started an Excel spreadsheet as a way for us to keep track of our hours and who the members were. The hours exchange were pretty minimal because we were really just trying to like get our footing. So there wasn't a lot of, paperwork or like record keeping for me at the time, but it was enough. I mean, it was enough to keep me busy. And we used a Yahoo group as well. At the time, I thought, oh, let's model this after Free Cycle because I was familiar with St. Louis Free Cycle where you posted offers and requests. And then I think, what's the word? When the offer and request gets met, it is fulfilled. Something like, yeah, fulfilled. So I thought we would do that. Yahoo groups just, it wasn't that user friendly. It was a little wonky. We didn't get a lot of exchanges that way, but we got a handful of them. And then around 2011, I was pregnant with my son, and he was born in 2012. And of course, my world needed, change focus, and I was deep in, child rearing again. And my daughter was like 3.25 years, almost 4 at the time. So I often tell this story incorporating like personal life moments because it's like the time bank kind of flows with just like the timeline of my life, like over the 9 or 10 years that it was going. So my son was it was 2013, I'm kind of like back into, I can take my focus off of so much internal home focus, and I really want to start doing this community stuff again. So I reached out to some people who had originally joined the Time Bank, and one member was willing to meet with me and kind of help me get things going again. And we started doing regular monthly orientations, which I had done before in the 2010-11 era. I had done monthly orientations because I was part of Yayo Arts Collective, which is a women's arts collective here in St. Louis that was founded by Dale Chambers. And so that's really where I learned a lot of my kind of the basics in the spirit of like collective work as well. So I had this idea of this collective, and I met Dale, and she was already had in motion this collective work that was going to run this art gallery and community space. So those two went really well together. And so I started doing monthly orientations at Yayo Arts. At the time, it was called Gaia Community Art Gallery, and also In Power Institute, which is both are Black-owned spaces. And so when we restarted again in 2013, we started doing monthly orientations at community centers and libraries. We had folks who reached out to me and said, hey, I like what you're doing. We'd love to offer you space. So we weren't paying for space whenever we did these orientations, which was great in the spirit of a non-monetary currency system. And we grew to about 200 members over the years of probably 2013, 2014 to 2018. One part of our growth, or one tool that was useful in our growth, was finding out about this free software from a group called Our World, like an hour of time. And they were based in, where are they based, Michael? I don't even remember.
They're in Maine.
Maine? No, Connecticut?
Yeah, Portland, Maine.
Yeah, okay. So back to Maine again, which is interesting because that's where the article originated from. So they know what they know, what works in Maine. So Our World was this time bank support organization that would offer free resources to time banks who wanted to get started, including the software, which was also free. So Derek Laney and I, who I was working with at the time, an original Cowry Collective member, learned how to use the software and then started teaching folks how to use that software to set up their exchanges at the monthly orientations. So really, I mean, what the goal is to get people in person meeting to make these exchanges, but you need to use technology to like have that matching service happen. Um, let's see, we did that for a while, and there was a group of leadership, like a leadership team that formed around Cowry too. Um, that included Julia Ho, who was working with Missourians Organizing for Reform and Empowerment, I believe, at the time, who then went on to lead Solidarity Economy St. Louis, which is still operating. And then some other really dedicated Cowry Collective members wanted to come together. They were willing to like help and volunteer on a regular basis. And so I did have support in running Cowry for a while. And, you know, I learned a lot. We can talk about like the values that are embedded in time banking and kind of like what it means to us and how we've lived them out and how it makes sense to be living them out right now. And let's see, I would say like in 2018, I kind of like got another bug to like, or the bug, you know, I don't know, it was itching. I was really making me kind of like itch to do more and kind of reinvigorate Cowry again, because for those who run time banks or for those who want to run a time bank, there is a lot of energy that is needed in really convincing yourself, convincing others, and teaching others that we really can be interdependent. And that's a really hard concept, I think, for all of us under capitalism to varying degrees to really accept and embrace and then live out. And so it's not so much that you're just teaching people like, oh, this is how you use the software and here's how you post an exchange and here's how you like, you know, do the record keeping. It's also like, can you start to believe that you can ask your community for something and they can answer it, and that you don't need to run to the store or you don't need to get on Angie's list or whatever, you know, as soon as you think you need something. Can you trust your community members to kind of meet you and like show you what they can do? And we're just so used to more quick and easy exchanges, which, you know, typically involve cash.
Mm-hmm.
So there's really like a whole paradigm shift and a whole like theory behind time banking that you really got to like, okay, like how do I put this into practice? And that does take a lot of energy to keep that message going and find creative ways to keep enticing people to be interdependent. So I think the time bank had reached a point where I was like, okay, you know, what's going on? I'm getting fatigued. I'm getting very fatigued. I'm not really liking the administrative part of running this time bank anymore. I don't want to do it. And so I happened upon Adrienne Marie Brown's work, Emergent Strategy. And that was really invigorating and energizing for me. And I thought, okay, let's try to apply some principles of emergent strategy to Cowry Collective. I did a workshop in the spring of 2018 with Elisha Hall, who's a friend of both of ours. And I think it went really well. And then I just moved into a personal space of like, you know, this is still going to be really hard to like get this thing like going again. I was also in an interesting place where the software from our world was not satisfactory for us, and I wanted to build our own app. And so that's a whole nother thing, you know? I'm not a tech person. I'm a community person. And so that was really, I felt like was a big like hump or leap that we needed to make. And I just couldn't really figure out how to do it in terms of funding, in terms of getting the right person to do it, because it wasn't going to be me. I mean, I had ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I did apply to, you know, some different funding sources and didn't get them. And so I really just kind of started losing, not hope, just kind of like, like maybe I just, you know, it's been about 9 years of doing this and maybe I'm just not going to do this anymore for a while, forever. And so that really kind of led me into this place of deep grieving, actually. I stopped doing the community work. I didn't quite know who I was without it. And I didn't really realize I was grieving until months into the process of not doing the work. So I've had some time to have clarity, totally, separate and out of the limelight of community, and, reached out to, like, friends, comrades like you to kind of talk more about like the personal side of of walking away or getting fatigued enough to, um, leave the work. And then I'm interested in now this place of, I'm not going to start a time bank again, but I'm interested in talking about and sharing practices from time banking and from leading a time bank for all those years to the current situation, and, kind of putting an end to the chapter of Cowry Collective in my life. And maybe someone, maybe what we share and like what we talk about, maybe there will be another app or something that comes out of this, and see how current mutual aid groups can, maybe it's already in the works for all we know. I mean, every day something's changing. So maybe the app is being built right now.
Hmm. Do you feel does that? I mean, so as you've told that story now, do you feel complete?
Yeah, I didn't want to start crying, so I just wanted to stop. I was like, I'm not going to talk about this grieving deeply right now. But it does feel good to have gotten back to a place where I'm not as sad about not doing the work, that I can start celebrating like what I was able to accomplish and what St. Louis, what our group in St. Louis was able to do. And so I'm looking forward to doing more of that in the spring with you, when we're able to meet and travel, and just kind of like go through the timeline of Cowry and celebrate it, and, see where and how it could, inform others. And if nothing else, I definitely have like this personal like satisfaction and solace from going into library work. That's been really important to me, to have something meaningful and similar to time banking, to put my energy and like skills into. So I'm really pleased to be part of a career or a workplace, a community space that includes lending still.
Hmm. And so then, go. Why don't you tell us more about the time banking values that you were mentioning earlier? I
Oh yeah, I might
know,
need help. I don't remember all five like easily now.
yeah, yeah, the five thing. I mean, those are not as important as like whatever values like end up showing up in your life for the time bank. Well, one on a sort of aside, I was mentioning earlier just the way that I was feeling with having to withdraw from community, and
Mm,
feeling a certain sense of grieving because I both depend on these spaces as a space of organizing, but also as a space of relationship building. These are spaces that are social and really emotionally tangible for me. Um,
mm-hmm.
so to like have to take all of that energy and try to shift it virtually is going to be a long-standing challenge for me. And even when we move out, I was talking to Baba Fred of the Black Oak Center, of course, for the folks on the watching. But I was talking about
Baba Fred.
yes, about this recently. He was like, I mean, anything gonna change, Baba. Like, you can't shake hands, you can't hug people no more. Like, folk gonna be dealing with this for the next 18 months. Like, this bit of trauma. So yeah. So that's just sort of my personal moment of grief that I'm engaging. Both with withdrawing into sort of more solitary space, but also with how this changes the dynamics of social space once we are out of the house again. Um, so with that lighter note, um,
Da-dunch.
yeah. So
Saw light.
yeah, tell us how time banking has informed your sort of personal values that you've been able to bring into your life, into your household, into your own relationships.
Um, Gosh, I'm just like getting emotional because we're just going through so much right now. And, interdependence is, something we're trying to figure out how to do through screens, through phones, through arm's length away, which is a challenge. I think one of the values that I really love from time banking, and these values are taken from, there was another organization. I guess I always like to say like where these ideas come from, because some people, don't know anything about time banking, and then they're like, "Oh, and you started this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I started it." I'm like, "But I didn't create the whole, I didn't conceive of time banking itself," which I think is important to note. And so, time banks, we get our values from Time Banks USA, which is another organization, and probably the first organization that was started by Edgar Kahn, who's like considered the father of time banking. I would say he definitely popularized the ideas around time banking. Of course, we know that, yeah, the collective work and interdependence and community-based skill sharing and mutual aid has its origins in indigenous societies, across the globe. Um, and it's interesting, when shit hits the fan, that, all of a sudden we're like, okay, how do we make bread? Like, how does that work? Cause I can't find any at the store. Like I bought some yeast a couple days ago. And I know it's actually pretty easy to make bread, and it's something I enjoyed doing like probably over a decade ago. And so, we start returning to we go back to the root.
Yeah.
So, we start doing these radical things. Radical means going back to the root. So one of the values that I love that Time Banks USA put forth, and there's 5 values, is that everybody has something to offer. It's kind of like everybody has something unique to offer, just in the sense of who they are, and then who you are is enough. First of all, we see that, I am enough kind of like messaging going around, especially on social media. But what does that really mean? You're enough without having money and money producing abilities attached to you.
Mhm.
And so it really encapsulates the whole idea of everyone has something of value and everyone is valuable. And that's, there's so many things under that umbrella. That's so many identity things under that umbrella. Your age, your zip code, your neighborhood, your economic class, uh, your relationship status. There's so many different things that we get told that, if we're not meeting these certain standards that are set forth in like, more Eurocentric oppressive systems, then we're not enough. And that's a daily struggle, I know, for us to just feel like, hey, I'm enough, even though I didn't make this much money this year, or, I don't look this certain way, or I haven't lost this weight, or whatever things you hold on to that kind of dangle above yourself. Like, well, when I get to this, then I'll be enough. Time banking says no, like just right where you are right now, whatever skills you have, you're enough. You don't have to be a professional in the skill that you're offering. If you just have these, master gardening and farming skills, mentioning, Baba Fred and the work that y'all have done in Healthy Food Hub, then you teaching somebody how to start a garden or start, even container gardening, or just meet them where they're at and start very basic and kind of like teaching them one-on-one is very, very valuable. And so I love that value of time banking that just reminds you that the things that you just have come to know can really help those around you. And you can really derive a lot of like pleasure and satisfaction in sharing that. It's a way to kind of boost yourself and like boost your confidence. Um, and so, I've been into photography. I've studied photography in the past. I really enjoy cooking. I really got into like veganism and raw food at one point. Not currently gung ho on those, but still a part of my life in certain ways. And so some of the basic things I just learned, like recipes off the internet that I really got good at, I could share with people in the time bank. I could do like basic photography lessons, which I thought, just a few steps of teaching people someone how to take a decent photo, but it can make the difference when somebody's never taken a photography class, for example. So that's one that I really like. I heard a story one time of a Time Bank member who was in a wheelchair, and I don't know if he helped run orientations, but he was an integral part of the Time Bank in his city. And we don't have to be like, it's kind of just like moving beyond the cliche of like, we're all important. It's like, okay, well, how are we all important? And what does that look like? What does that really look like when you practice living out that everybody is very important and valuable?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and for those who are not familiar with those time banking values put forward by Time Banks USA, so yeah, one of them that Chinyere has talked about is the assets. Everyone is an asset. Redefining
Mm-hmm.
all work is valued, and certainly we're hearing a lot of conversation around that recently with folks saying that that fast food workers, grocery store workers, delivery personnel are all on the front line now and deserve hazard pay. Um, there is reciprocity. So, it's necessary that we build reciprocal networks, so it's not simply just that, mutual aid. In fact, I heard it stated mutual aid has to be mutual. And the sort of burnout that we often suffer is the sort of challenge of having both that offer and need fulfilled, which is that we're often very good at offering ourselves up and offering things up, offering our skills up. We do get that boost, but often the boost is temporary if we have over here this entire scale of needs that goes unfulfilled, and then we end up in a space where, okay, well, I'm empty because I've poured out and I haven't really had a space for that pouring in. Um,
Yeah.
so that certainly so reciprocity is one of those values. Social networks or social capital. The value of social capital, the value of those social networks. So it's not just the relationships that we have directly with one another, but it's the relationships that those relationships give us access.
Mm.
And then finally, that fifth value would be respect. Just recognizing that everyone is worthy of the respect that we're able to offer them inside of this space, and that enriches the space of the time bank. And we're talking about this on a fortuitous weekend because the 23rd is International Time Banking Day.
Ooh, didn't know.
Uh, it just got launched last year, and it was I think the first launch, so last year's launch, they only announced it like maybe 10 days out from. It was like, oh, we can't.
Mobilize. Get
Yes,
get it out to your community in 10 days.
yes. But yeah,
Go, go, go.
yeah, they had and had a little bit more forward momentum. I think Edgar Khan's going to do a virtual webinar of some sort. Uh,
Hmm.
so yes, we are on International Time Banking Day um, on the 23rd, and that's we're talking on the weekend prior to that. Um,
Very good.
so where are you at now? I mean, in terms of our current situation, what are you engaged in terms of caring for yourself, caring for your space? What's on your heart and mind now?
Mm. It's it's interesting just kind of to watch the little bits that I'm gathering through social media, and am trying to limit my time on social media right now. It's interesting to witness the different like mutual aid offerings that are happening, and then yeah, I suppose more will be coming from like larger businesses and organizations and corporations, as it should. It's interesting to witness that from a space of me being like, oh, okay, people are organizing. I'm not the one who's organizing that right now, and that's okay. Um, I really did, you know, form Cowry Collective as a way to meet experiences and situations like what we're going through right now, societal breakdown. That's not how I pitched it. I wanted people to feel like they were joining something fun and heartwarming and that would connect them to others, which is all true about time banking. But, I guess at the time I was just doing some reading and having conversations. And I thought, yeah, time banking is something that we can really use when capitalism falls or is falling or is exploding or, yeah. So we're in that space now. And so it kind of feels good to not, there's urgency in my mind and there's urgency for me to think like, okay, what do I need to do to protect myself and my family? But the urgency isn't that I need to, send out a bunch of emails and figure out how to build an app. And, we're going to get through this, by me leading something in a way where I'm just going, going, going. Um, in terms of just coping right now and trying to, working on thriving in the midst of such an unpredictable, uh, global changing environment. I am returning to, because there's no choice. Sometimes we have to have no choice to do the things that are good for us. And so, yeah, I'm returning to a slower way of life. I, don't need to be. I'm not at work right now, and so I'm cooking more and I'm cleaning more and I'm starting to organize my home. It's spring and my energy always increases during the spring. And so I'm just giving attention to all these things that have been neglected in my home and even my body. And so that feels good. It doesn't feel good to not have the choice, to go out where and when I want. But some of the things I really enjoyed exchanging in the time bank, like cooking and learning how to cook different types of food, um, are present, and I'm getting a lot of joy from that. I'm thinking of like creative ways to connect with people, and I'm seeing all the creative ways that people are connecting with each other right now via technology, and that's very, aligned with time banking, and I'm loving to see that. So I'm sending more video chat, having more video chats with friends, and I'm wanting to hear people's voices more. So I've long been sending some like audio recordings of myself reading some chapters from a book that I've really loved since I heard about it last fall. Ross Gay's The Book of Delights, and I actually put it next to me in case I wanted to show people. Here's the book, and the essays are really short, and it's just a year-long project that Ross Gay, who's a poet and author, engaged in when he turned 42 years old, and he wanted to find something delightful in his day every single day, and he wrote about it. And so I've been sharing those with loved ones. It was really kind of like a very teeny tiny group, mostly with one person, and then I started, now kind of doing that as an offering because I have all these voice memos, like voice recordings, like stored in my phone. So I'm sending those to people. Some folks are sending me messages back. And so that's kind of cool to see that like catch on among my friend circle, and spending more time with my children. That's kind of like a yay or a oh my God, depending on the moment of the day. And we're just learning how to, really live together in a small space, which is our home, which is pretty small. And there's some things that I really feel like after we get through this and after we go back to, maybe not back, we're going forward into a new era, that I think I will bring, and I feel like a lot of us will carry forward, So I really do hope and I really do think that there will be some slowness and some enjoying the home more and some just like making use of like what we have and being creative and wanting to share with others when we can. I feel like some of those values and practices will really carry forward. And so, as we figure out what's going to happen and there has to be some rebuilding process, I do think that, this is impactful enough for us to really say, hey, like, um, it's still really important for me to stay connected to the people in my life. It's still really important for me not to derive, uh, what's the word? I would say joy, happiness, through shopping, um, as much. And so, maybe there's some anti consumerist ways that we'll be able to carry forward. And I do think that capitalism has a very strong hold on us, and we're born into it, and we're in the water of capitalism, and we don't even know, and we're just swimming, swimming, swimming. And that we need something. I'm not saying that we all want to go through this. We definitely don't. But I think there has to be something strong enough to combat capitalism. And unfortunately, you know, this pandemic is strong enough to combat some of our capitalist ways and force us into a very difficult place of shifting our lives dramatically in such a short period of time. But there's still some positives from it.
Mhm.
And we can still remain connected to each other and just keep reaching out.
Yeah. Yeah, I know in my ongoing conversations with Baba Fred, he always likes to call up and he's like, "Yeah, I've been trying to be quiet, Baba, because I don't want to be a doomsayer." You know? But the other side of that is when I think about the sort of simplicity of residing at Black Oaks at various times, and just being at the eco campus, and and basically because the cell phone may or may not hit the tower, it's like
Right?
I don't know if we get the call, whatever. um, I already know that what the state of my electricity is here, right? The sort of the type of predictability that we are looking for now is exists in that space because you're sort of reduced to um, types of simplicity that I think we're trying to grapple with now. Certainly the simplicity of sitting at my table the other night and setting up the pickled green beans, and someone remarking on the photo or on the video like this was so calming, and I was like,
Mm.
calming for me too, and that was by design, right? Um, I have a very different anxiety ceiling, because I have been in spaces where um, I've contemplated types of forms of disaster for many many years.
Hmm.
And I was actually talking about Fred also about the shift in what I see for Jakaya, right? I grew up during a
Hmm.
period where we entered a decade of war, ended in a Great Recession, and and she's sort of growing up where she's a teenager during a worldwide pandemic. So it's just
Here you go,
an
kids.
interesting 20 years. Like I mean, man, I was coming out of high school. I was like, yeah, man, this is the best decade of my life. um,
Hmm.
so yeah, it's an interesting period, interesting moment. And as you were talking about Ross Gay's Book of Delights, you are responsible for me listening to his Krista Tippett interview. And it's
So
in
good.
this interview. So anyone who has not heard Ross Gay's interview with Krista Tippett on Being, please do listen to it. And certainly one of the very quotable lines, among many in there, was, "And to me, joy has nothing to do with ease, and joy has
Mm.
everything to do with the fact that we're all going to die."
Hmm. Timely. Timely. Yeah, I think that's where I learned of Roske is that interview, that On Being interview, On Being podcast. I think there's unedited versions
Mhm.
of all the interviews, and so definitely listen to the unedited version. And yeah, his work really hit me because I had started like this self exploration of joy, kind of like what's happiness, what's joy, what's pleasure. Adrienne Marie Brown, again, her second work, well, probably not the second, but like her latest work, Pleasure Activism, a book that came out, I don't know, probably last year, maybe 2 years ago. Um, is all about, talking about, well, how do we have pleasure in our lives? How do we use pleasure as a tool for fighting back against, the ways that capitalism kills us all slowly and quietly. And so I was just fascinated with that, even having experienced like, just some really challenging times in my life where I'm like, yeah, there's no joy right now. Like, but how do you, it's not just something that happens to you, which is what Ross Gay talks about. You have to look for it. You have to look for the delights. And so delights and delightful became a, like a part of my vocabulary in, kind of thinking about what, yeah, what are the levels of like achieving and experiencing these different feelings. And he does really talk about joy being accompanied with joy and pleasure, which are not one and the same, being accompanied by like the absence of that pleasure pain kind of dichotomy. And we get to feel delightful or like notice the delights a lot of times in because of the difficult times in our lives or difficult times collectively that we're living through. And so it is just he just gives this really good reminder and on this daily basis that, you can always still find something like the sun, streaming in through the window or, um, the way something feels in your hands when you're cooking, just something tactile to kind of bring you back to this moment. Um, Even when there's some mayhem, there's a lot of mayhem going on outside your window. There's still always something delightful, but it's like there's a charge to look for it though. You sometimes we really got to look for it and dig for it, but it's there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And and in that interview he also nudges. I mean, I certainly his search for joy has caused him to ask some really interesting questions. One of them, um at one point in the interview he talks about sitting and just kind of sitting outside at an establishment or a restaurant, and just the relationship between being unproductive and vagrancy, right? And certainly
Yeah.
folks have reflected on that nowadays, that like, yes, as we are sitting at home, we are being nudged, very slightly to, hey, here's a schedule that you can use for your children. Here are all of these sort of exercise platforms that you can kind of get into that with. So we're being nudged to kind of maintain these sort of heightened levels of productivity, even as
Hmm.
we are our pace is slow to a crawl. So, yeah, so definitely, a moment to reflect on. I mean, a Marie Kondoism. Does this bring me joy?
Yeah, I'm also getting into that. I mean, I've been into that for a little bit, put it to the side. I couldn't get through all the steps when I tried to do it about 5 years ago. For those who aren't familiar, I don't know how, but Marie Kondo took the world by storm, and she has this process of simplifying your life and purging, where you go through four categories, and there's clothing, and then there's books, and then there's papers, and then there's like mementos. Um, and so I think I got to books. And so I'm really wanting to go through all four steps in my home this spring. And so yeah, I'm really attracted to the idea of which I think really is connected to time banking too. It's just a simpler way of life and less things and more joy. And how can you live out something that's become a meme or a statement that's just kind of flashing around? Um, how can you, what does that look like, and what do you have to get rid of to just peel back the layers and be like, oh, I'm actually okay with just sitting here for a bit looking out this window. I don't need to go and get a new dress because I'm bored and I can't go get a new dress even if I wanted to. So it's it's interesting how I also like the point that you brought up with like the schedules and like things to do and keep ourselves, I wouldn't say busy, but occupied, or kind of establishing a routine for ourselves in the midst of not having a place that tells us where to be and how to be productive. And I didn't really think about it like that. I thought about it more like, we're freaking out because we don't have a schedule, and schedules and order, it can bring the order that we want and need in our life. But it's still really important for us to just be really uncomfortable with all this time. And, if you're fortunate enough to be getting compensated while you're out of work, like, well, then what do you do? Like, you're being paid to chill. Like, what? When does that happen? And can we start embracing this slower pace that, maybe will elongate our lives in the long run?
Mhm. All right, so I'm drawing up a few points here. One, we need time banks. So there's a lot of mutualism and mutual aid energy that's stirred up now. As a solidarity economy practitioner and theorist, I want people to drive that energy following the crisis into the development of cooperatives, into the development of time banks, and all sorts of solidarity economy initiatives. I'm hearing we have the opportunity inside of this space to occupy joy, to sort of examine joy, to reach new heights of joy, and I'm hearing moments and opportunities um, for reflection on what we value, how we engage value, how we value others. Are there other things that
Mm.
you are drawing up from the dialogue today?
Yeah, it's amazing you can even roll them out like that. I was like, was he writing? Was he taking notes? Very good. Um, and then, yeah, one last thing I would add is that, I spend a lot of time in parks as it is, before having all of my options restricted in terms of where I can be and what I can do. I really derive a lot of pleasure from being in nature, and very grounding, and just like it's a really big part of my well-being. And so I just find it interesting, that I feel like the only place that we can be right now is at a I mean, you can be outside a bit and spaced out from each other, but is a park. And so I was just like, please don't let them take the park away. Like if we all just promise to stay 6 to whatever feet away, just don't take the parks away from us. And so just, these very basic and universal concepts are emerging, and or we're just getting like a really strong reminder or a slap in the face about, what's really important in nature as a grounding tool, and nature as an ever changing entity, that's unpredictable but has order, um, is it's a great reminder that, we're part of nature. In order for us to stay well and sane, we probably need to be out in nature more now. And you know what? You don't really have any other choice. So when it's time to get out of your house, it's why not go take a walk and, try to get some calm from nature, because nature's been, maybe just watching us. I guess I'm embodying nature as a entity, but we'll get through it. Trees, weather all kinds of storms, and so we can see all kinds of metaphors if we want to in being with nature, and kind of finding our place in this whole the natural order of things, even when things feel so, unnatural and unpredictable.
All right. Um, this conversation has certainly made me feel better. I'm glad that we had it in the public eye. Um, yes, I
Me too.
appreciate the dialogue, and I look forward to continuing the process of closure with the Cowry, and what that tells me about what my pathway is for the Kola, because there's a
Yes.
longer
Yes.
story about, like, I was interviewing someone for a potential fiscal sponsorship with the Kola, and they were given these two models of fiscal sponsorship, and in the Model A they were like, hey, and under Model A we would own all of your intellectual property, and I was like,
What?
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 you know
I came up with this. I don't know about that.
Like, I hadn't even considered that the cola has intellectual property. I was like, yeah, but I have
Right.
been pouring a bunch of ideas into publications and
Hmm.
lines, and wow, yeah, and
Yeah, you're not about to get all that.
it felt very personal at that point. But it did highlight that if a thing lives beyond, then what are the ways that there's a graceful exit from a thing. So
Oh, graceful exit. Oh, yes. I've been through the ungraceful part. not in privately. So time to do the graceful part publicly.
Yes,
Looking forward to it.
absolutely. Well, thank you very much for the conversation today, Chinyere. And
Thanks for the invite.
yes, and I look forward to more Marcos, more Polos.
Marco.
Uh,
Okay. Yeah, chat you up soon.
yeah,
Be safe, everyone. Be peaceful. Keep your distance. Enjoy the trees.
yes. And when you can, meet your neighbor.
Yes. Yeah. Greet your neighbor. Check on your neighbor. Yeah. Be good neighbors to each other as virtually as well.
All right. All right, folks, this has been the closure of the broadcast of the Ujamaa Hour. Thank you all for checking in with us for this special edition. Thank you for, enduring my awkwardness at the beginning of the broadcast as I attempted, ability and transparency,
You great. Yeah.
you know.
You had to fill time. Yeah. So
Yeah.
thank you.
And I look forward to seeing you all on the next broadcast, the second Monday of April. And I'm pretty sure that we've got Ian. Do we have? No, no, we've got Maida McNeil of the Honey Pot Performance and Fifth City Project on in April. So I'll be back here April 13th, and we will see you again. All right, peace out.
Peace.